On this episode of the Press Rewind Prince Lyrics podcast, I'll be breaking down the stone circle around my thoughts of the song Big Tall Wall, a vault track that was released on the Sign of the Times Super Deluxe from 2020. The thing about Big Tall Wall is there are actually two quite distinctly different versions of this song from a musical and lyrical perspective. So I'm going to cover both versions on this episode, and I say they're both quite different lyrically, but in some ways that's true, and in other ways it's not so true. The sentiments are essentially the same, and the choruses are pretty much identical. But if we just start with version 1, that was recorded in April of 1986 at Prince's Galpin Boulevard home studio, while version 2 was recorded in July of 1987. So, basically 15 months later. And this was done at Prince's recently opened Paisley Park studio in Chanhassen, Minnesota. So, two different versions of the song, two different recording studios, both basically Prince's home studios, one in the smaller version at his Galpin Boulevard home studio, and then the other one, of course, in the newly built Paisley Park, which would be his main studio for the rest of his life. Version 1 appeared to be earmarked for early configurations of the Dream Factory album, but it was never really officially considered for the Crystal Ball album, which is what kind of some of those songs from Dream Factory morphed into once Dream Factory dissolved, and then Crystal Ball dissolved, and then Crystal Ball became Sign of the Times. But Big Tall Wall version 1 was never really considered even for Crystal Ball. So version 2 seemed to be geared more for the Graffiti Bridge movie and soundtrack that Prince was working on in 87 and 88. So that project wouldn't see the light of day until 1990, but before Prince had to kind of deviate a little bit from his plan and work on a Batman soundtrack, he was working on Graffiti Bridge. And Prince Vault mentions that the title of the song was incorporated in an early draft of the script for Graffiti Bridge that Prince was working on, as well as an early track listing of the soundtrack album. So he must have, early thoughts about this second version of the song was that it was going to be completely, change direction again and going from, Prince and the Revolution project to essentially, his next big project without them, as a solo, basically returning as a solo artist. I mean, he's always essentially a solo artist, but you know what I mean. There's no band associated with his music again until the New Power generation. So why did Prince record such vastly different versions of the same song? I think going through the lyrics will give maybe a little bit of perspective, but I think it also has mostly to do with what was going on in his personal life, potentially, but that's just a choice he made and a decision he came to agree on, at least, that version 1 didn't have the right sound, it didn't maybe have the right sentiment, didn't have version 1, even though the lyrics are basically the same in the chorus and the sentiment and the lyrics are the same, the music is more poppy. It sounds happier than version 2, which, again, the chorus is pretty much the same and the lyrics and sentiments are the same, but the music is much darker and harder edged. So, musically is where the major differences lie. And as a preface to discussing the lyrics to Big Tall Wall version 1, I'm going to actually read the April 18th, 1986 entry on Big Tall Wall from the Dwayne Tudor Parade and Sign of the Times studio session books. And it starts off with a quote from Susan Rogers. Prince finally purchased a condominium for Susanna and persuaded her to go and live in this condominium. It didn't last very long, just for a couple of months. At that time, he wrote a song called Big Tall Wall. To spend time with Prince, there was always one unwritten but understood rule. You were there as long as he wanted you there, and the circumstances could change quickly. There was a lot of time with him, and he could be really private, even in the same space as you, revealed Susanna. And Susanna, again, is Susanna Melvoin, who was Prince's girlfriend at the time, and who is largely considered to be the muse or the inspiration for Big Tall Wall. You had to be involved in his work ethic. He spent so much time alone, he was so private, but at the same time he would demand that you become part of that privacy. But you're not allowed to be the expressor. He is. So if there's anything to be said about the work, or about the space and time, it was on his terms. And I think everybody respected that. But we got to see that all kind of play itself out. Sometimes it ran really smoothly, and sometimes it had a lot of bumps. With all of the pressure Prince was under, something had to give, and one part of his life that he could control was his living situation with Susanna. They were engaged, and he didn't want to break it off, but he knew he needed a change, according to Melvoin. One morning we woke up, and he said, "You're going to get your own place. Prince's bodyguard at the time, Gilbert Davison's going to take you to a place that's in town, and it's nice. You're going to have your own place." I basically collapsed in bed, and I was like, oh my God, now what? I've done everything. I've said yes to you. I've told you I was going to marry you. We've made a life here. You told me to renounce my life with my family, and now you're going to tell me I have to go get a place? And I did dutifully what I was told, but I was still around the house every day. Using guitars, bass, drums, and the Mirage synth, Prince recorded Big Tall Wall on his own. The lyrics reveal Prince's contradicting views about their relationship, exposing how he likely viewed creating a place for Susanna to be away from him, but at the same time recognizing that he was turning it into a prison that made it impossible for her to leave him. The song's lyrics even referenced the apartment in Lake Calhoun that literally had round walls. "I'm gonna build a big tall wall, stone circle so you can't get out. True love is what it's all about. If you really love someone, you don't move them out," reasons Susan Rogers. This wasn't going to continue, and this wasn't even a wife. This was a fiancé. It's like, I suppose, what happens when you fall in love with a friend, then you recognize, oh my God, if we lose this relationship, we're going to lose the friendship too. And man, he cherished that friendship. That meant so much to him. You could see how the two of them were together. They were so close. "Big Tall Wall, that's the bird in the gilded cage stuff," explained Susanna. Wendy saw how charismatic Prince could be. Wendy, of course, is Susanna's twin sister. Wendy saw how charismatic Prince could be, but with her sister involved with him, everything hit closer to home for her and caused problems that followed them on stage and into the studio. He was able to get a lot of good people to love him. A lot of good, decent people were around him to love him, like on the recording of Parade. There was a lot of love happening there. Once he started really getting into it with Susanna, that's when it all started going to shit. And I think he made a mistake thinking he could get away with these shenanigans with Susanna when he had me and Lisa in the room. Okay. That is what the book has to say about Big Tall Wall. At least version 1, and I'll dive into version 2 later. So now that the context of the song's creation is understood, I think it'll make the lyrical analysis that much easier. Or at least without having to repeat that. So he starts version 1 with basically the chorus. "I'm going to build a big tall wall, stone circle so you can't get out. Big tall wall. True love is what it's all about." So the song starts, like I said, with a reading of the chorus, the idea of a big tall wall. It's giving the listener a visual of, like an enormous wall, one that's so tall and so wide that the idea of climbing over it would be ludicrous. It's basically a prison, as has already been alluded to. It's an insurmountable feat for the person that the singer will be putting on the other side of that wall. And again, the stone circle imagery of a fortress is what I get, an impenetrable wall that can be only breached through a drawbridge or a tunnel that can allow a person to pass in and out of the space behind the wall. Of course, Prince probably had the visual representation of the Calhoun Isle condominiums, which were converted grain silos in the middle of Minneapolis. These are the condos that Prince moved Susanna to when, he decided she needed her own place to stay. And they're literally made of big, tall walls of stone. So it's hard not to assume that there was some direct inspiration from those Calhoun Isle condominiums with the writing of the chorus, at least. The comment, true love is what it's all about, is to me a bit of a delusional idea that by putting a person in a sort of prison that it's a sign of love, that he was hers and then she was his. That he basically wants her close around him whenever he wants it, but not really allowing her to leave without his permission. So it is truly like you're caged, like Susanna called it, a gilded cage, or again, to use the term prison. You're available to me when I want you to be, and when I don't want you to be, you will stay here. Of course, Susanna was not literally in a prison. She could come and go from the apartments when she pleased. And she made it very clear in her quotes from the book that, she was mostly back at the house anyway, even when she had this apartment. But I'm sure there were times where Prince said, I need you to sleep at your place tonight. Or I need my space right now. Go back to your place. What he was doing in those times, that's between them. If he was working on stuff, if he just needed time to think, or, I'm sure there were some other things going on. Prince was never really one to, I hate to say, to be truly monogamous and faithful to a single woman in the 80s at least, when, he was just kind of still navigating his popularity and his newfound fame. Maybe that was the case throughout his entire life. I'm sure Manuela would have stories. Potentially even Maite would have stories, but I'm not going to speculate. I'm not going to gossip. I'm just going to talk about this song, and I basically understand that they broke up because Prince was not faithful, or at least refused to be faithful. So that is basically the chorus of Big Tall Wall, and that will essentially be the same chorus for both versions, so I won't need to repeat myself too much with the discussion of the chorus. When I see you walking down the street, my heart does a double beat. I want to rap, but I can't find the line that'll groove an angel so divine. When you look at me, I drippity drip, all my cool goes slippity slip. I keep tripping on the thought of you. I want to get you what I'm gonna do. So the purpose of this verse feels like a setup for the punchline, or imagining the song as, a dark rom-com, where the singer sees the woman of his dreams walking down the street. He wants to rap to her, i.e. spit some lines, introduce himself in a charismatic and interesting way. She has an effect on him that he can't quite understand. All of his cool drips away, as he says. He's slipping and tripping and dripping. It's a lot of the rhyming words. When he gets her, he's going to put her inside a prison. When he finally is about to snag her, so, he's finally, spit his game, and he's able to get her attention, get her to notice him, snag her, I guess, for lack of a better term, a sentiment that's both confident and insecure. So it's quite the juxtaposition. He feels confident enough that this angel so divine is going to be won over by him, but appearingly so insecure that he needs to put her behind a big tall wall with stone circles so she can't get out. So that is, again, quite the juxtaposition of confidence and insecurity. And that's when it kind of leads right into the chorus again. I'm going to build a big tall wall, stone circles so you can't get out. Big tall wall, baby. True love is what it's all about. Then in verse 2 he says, if I see you in a restaurant, I can't eat, and baby, you're all I want. You make me sweat, girl. You jerk all my cool. I feel like a kid in a nursery school. All the others claim ecstasy. All I know is what you do to me. You got me feeling like the head of a snare. Come on, baby, hit me. I don't care. So again, this is a bit of a similar verse to the first one, in which the singer is simply calling out other scenarios where this woman's breathtaking beauty is affecting him in a way that he finds amusing in its ridiculousness. First it was on the street, now it's in a restaurant. He can't eat, he's sweating, he lost his cool, she makes him feel like a kid. Maybe both a reference to the innocence that, a schoolboy crush can kind of convey, or imply, I should say, but also could refer to a time when he had no game, just like now. Like, he claims to have game because, he's going to win her over, but he's not acting like it with all this sweating and losing his cool. That doesn't kind of paint a picture of a guy who's got it together enough to win this woman over. So, it's a little bit like that, feeling like a kid, time when he doesn't have any game, but also the innocence of that first crush. The line about claiming ecstasy feels a bit odd here, a reference to other man to have potentially claimed her. I mean, he says all the others claim ecstasy. So again, is that stating that he's referring to the other men who have maybe spent time with her, that have been with her physically? I'm not entirely sure. All I know is what you do to me is what he says after that line. So you got me feeling like a head of a snare, and he's talking about a snare drum, because then he follows that up with, come on baby, hit me, like a drum. I don't care. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's pretty much the same kind of verse as the first one, just a different setting, different lines to essentially say this woman's beautiful. I'm losing my cool around her. I don't know what to do. I'm still going to get her because I'm confident. And when I do, I'm going to put her behind a big tall wall. Stone circle so you can't get out. Big tall wall. True love is what it's all about. Yeah, and again, it's just fascinating to me that I guess you have to kind of assume that he thinks that because this woman is so amazing and so beautiful that she's going to be pursued by other men so voraciously and frequently that it's just easier if he locks her away. Then he doesn't have to worry about the temptations that will exist out in the world, instead of feeling like, oh, she wants to be with me, she picked me. Why am I so concerned about what other men see in her? It shouldn't matter, but in the scope of the song, it definitely matters, because he's taking extreme measures to keep her away from other men now that he's got her, because of how basically beautiful and amazing she is. So after the second verse, at least in version 1, there really isn't anything new to discuss in terms of the lyrics. It's simply a repeating of much of the same lines, and repeating the chorus, or at least variations of the chorus, over and over again. So I think I'll just go to version 2 from here. But as I mentioned musically, version 1's a lot bubblier. It sounds more like a poppy revolution hit than what he did with version 2, recorded about 15 months later in summer of '87. Basically at the height of the Black Album, when he was recording songs for the Black Album. It has that kind of hard-hitting electronic drums and funk dance sound to it that a lot of Black Album songs did. It wouldn't have surprised me if Big Tall Wall would have made the Black Album, or at least been considered, but doesn't indicate that that's the case. According to Prince Vault, it talks about, again, Graffiti Bridge, but it never mentions anything about the Black Album. So in version 2, he starts off with, the one-sided approach of hitting on this beautiful woman. Hey, sugar, come here. I got something to lay on your mind. And then he goes into the chorus. I'm going to build a big tall wall, stone circle so you can't get out. Big tall wall. True love is what it's all about. So that's the part that, between versions 1 and version 2, that stays identical. Musically, very different. Lyrically, different, for the most part. Chorus, or at least I should say the verse is different, for the most part. chorus, identical. So if it wasn't for the chorus being identical, these could be two different songs entirely, with two different titles, and we would never really know. We might say, oh, there's some similarities there between this song and the song that he recorded in April of 86. Fascinating. But no, they're the same song, the same titled song with the same exact chorus. And, as we go through the lyrics of version 2, you'll see the sentiments is essentially the same, and what he's attempting to do in the verses are very similar, just done slightly differently. And again, it's a darker, heavier groove and less bouncy happy than the version 1. One thing that Prince does, again, in this version that is somewhat similar to songs he did in Black Album is falsetto. He sings falsetto on the verses in this version. You hear both his lower register and his falsetto kind of intermingling throughout the song. The first verse is, if I see you in a restaurant, ooh baby, you're all I want. Your sexy body, your curly brown hair. Try to run if you want to, I don't care. So that line about if I see you in a restaurant is this pretty much the same line that he says in verse 2 from version 1. This is going to get a little awkward for me to keep referring to verse numbers and version numbers, but I'm going to try. Verse 2 in version 1 mentions the restaurant. So he's in a restaurant in that verse. So, but he does that in verse 1 in version 2. And he again mentions he sees her in a restaurant, but he's not hungry anymore because he's only hungry for her, not for food. He highlights physical characteristics, your sexy body, your curly brown hair. Susanna had curly brown hair. So again, it's possible that he was referring to her when he wrote the lyrics to the song, but it's a generic enough descriptive term could mean anyone. So he had other girlfriends in his life with curly brown hair. So it's not. It could be anyone. Is basically what I'm saying. He's very confident. Try to run if you want to. I don't care. So he's less insecure, it sounds like, in this version, at least so far. He sees her in a restaurant and he just mentions how sexy and appealing she is. And instead of saying he's losing his cool or, he's fumbling around with his words or sweating, he's just like, yeah, you're sexy. Try to run, but I'm going to get you. I'm going to track you down. I'm going to get you and I'm going to put you behind a big tall wall. So it's kind of an aggressive, just like the groove behind it. The lyrics are a bit more aggressive. They're a bit more, confident than he was in version 1. And in his personal life, I guess we'll talk about it now. Might as well. In version 1, he was still dating Susanna in spring of 1986, but that relationship ended for good. Sometime later that year. His fractured relationship with one of his key band members, Wendy Melvoin, on lead guitar, was fractured, due to the way he ended things with Susanna, her twin sister. So by summer of 87, he had already released Sign of the Times, the double album that came out of, that was basically the phoenix that rose from the ashes of Crystal Ball. And any song that was recorded for Crystal Ball that included the Revolution members on it, Prince more or less scrubbed away their contributions and either redid it or removed their instrumentation. So it became essentially just a Prince album without the Revolution, because that's what it was. So things had changed quite a bit. Susanna was out of the picture. The Revolution was out of the picture. He was getting a bit more into heavy funk grooves and trying to maybe win back his black audience that potentially had lost to an extent after Parade and now Sign of the Times. Anyway, so there's definitely some personal things going on in Prince's life that could lead to the different sound of the music between these two versions and the slightly different, it's subtle, but it's definitely different, the way he describes himself or the situation that he finds himself in with this beautiful woman between the two versions of Big Tall Wall. And, he's low-key menacing in this song, and in this version of the song at least. And the chorus doesn't help his cause. As I mentioned, chorus is the same, so we'll go back to verse 2. If I see you walking down the street, you'd be the one I want to meet. You dress so smart, you talk so neat. You're so fine, it's hard not to eat you, baby. So now this line here in verse 2 of version 2, if I see you walking down the street, is similar to the first line in verse 1 from version 1. So he's walking down the street in version 1, verse 1. Now he's walking down the street in verse 2 of version 2. So it's, again, more compliments, trying to justify why he's so into her and why he's feeling like he has to have her. She dresses smart. She talks neat. She's fine. It's hard not to eat you, baby. So he wanted to eat her in the restaurant. And again, this could be, again, a bit of a double entendre there. I want to eat you. Could be referring to cunnilingus. Could just be, the more metaphorical, I want to eat you up. I could gobble you up. You're so beautiful. And you could take it either way. It's hard not to eat you, baby. If I see you walking down the street, you'd be the one I want to meet. So he's still pretty confident. He's holding on to that confidence throughout the verses in this version. He's just more complimentary, talking about why she's so amazing and why he's so enamored with her and why he needs to put her behind a big tall wall, still in a circle so you can't get out. I'm going to build a big tall wall. True love is what it's all about. The bridge, B is for bold. Girl, it's how you make me feel. I is for ignorant. The situation's real. G is for my girlfriend. Yeah, I got another one. But that ain't gonna stop me and you from having fun. Okay. First, I will just mention the spelling out of big. Reminds me a bit of G-Spot, which was a song that he wrote for Jill Jones off of her debut, Paisley Park debut, which would come out in 1987, about the same time as him writing version 2 and recording version 2. B is for bold. She makes him feel bold. She makes him feel like, he can do anything. He can be with anyone, ideally her. I is for ignorant. The situation's real. I don't know if he just means that in a slang term, in a slang way. Man, this is ignorant. I feel so, connected with you. Instead of saying this is ridiculous or this is dumb, it's ignorant. It's ignorant how amazing you make me feel and how real this attraction is. G is for my girlfriend. And this is where, man, it's a good thing that he had broken up with Susanna by this time, because if he would have sang this bridge, G is for my girlfriend, yeah, I got another one, but that ain't gonna stop me and you from having fun. He's basically saying, you're just another one of many, or at least one of two. He doesn't say, you're just, I've got several others. He says, I got another one. So I guess if you're giving him the benefit of the doubt, he's only saying he only has one more, one additional girlfriend besides you, the subject of the song. So, and he's basically telling her, don't worry about it. I've got another girlfriend. I don't care. You shouldn't care. It's not going to stop us from having fun. So it's kind of it's a bit of a cruel line if it would have been sang to or about a woman that he was still actively dating. That would be cruel. To basically flaunt that in her face via song, that he's gonna put you behind a big tall wall so you can't get out, so then he could fool around with his other girlfriend. Or, he wants to keep you at arm's length to allow him space to see his other women or his other woman. So, yeah, a little problematic there from, if you're thinking of it from the perspective of, is this guy on the right side of this relationship, or is he a dog? Is he an asshole? And he's sure coming off as a dog and an asshole in this song, I think. In version 2 especially. Version 2 especially, because he's got the confidence, so he's at least not saying, he's not self-deprecating, like, I'm losing my cool, she's so amazing that I can't even keep it straight. Here he's saying, you're the shit, I'm the shit, I've got another girlfriend, deal with it. And once I win you over, because I will win you over, I'm going to keep you at arm's length in this stone circle behind this wall. But yeah, and after that bridge, then he goes into some other things. He's kind of just talking again about the big tall wall, repeating some lines about if I see you in a restaurant, I don't want nothing else, you're all I want, which is mostly a repeat of the first verse. But he does have some ad-libs in here that I guess I'll call out. There's an ad-lib about, pretty little baby, you're so glam, every time I see you, I want to slam. So is this like the first time that we hear him talk about Glam Slam? I know Glam Slam would be a song that was released off of Love Sexy, which came out in 88, but when was that recorded? Let's take a look. According to Princeville, Glam Slam wasn't recorded until December of 87. And so that was after this July 87 re-recording of Big Tall Wall. So this could be the first time he's used those two words together. And maybe he liked them so much that even if this particular song he ended up, despite working on it twice, setting it aside and never revisiting it again in his lifetime, Glam Slam was already in his brain. Enough that he put it, in the lyrics, or at least ad-libbed it here, and then wrote an entire song behind that concept of Glam Slam later in the year to be included on Love Sexy. So, yeah, it's I think that, again, even though I believe it's an ad-lib, or at least, a pre-planned ad-lib, it's worth mentioning. I'd put you before Uncle Sam, so she's more important than the government, whatever that means. Repeats again some of the chorus and talks about the B is for bold, it's how you make me feel. It does say Ducky, you make me feel so bold. Again, another potentially ad-libbed line, and he mentions Ducky and Bat Dance. Ducky, let's stick the 7-inch in the computer. So, just little interesting, just little interesting tidbits that I thought was worth calling out in some of these later lines. Glam Slam, Ducky. I don't know who Ducky is, but it could be just, again, like a Stella, somebody that's is representative of just a generic person. But Ducky here appears to be referencing her, but then in Bat Dance talks about sticking the 7-inch in the computer, which, again, I think is I think it's definitely a double entendre. Talks again about her sexy body, curly brown hair. Baby doll, you're so glam, every time I see you I want to slam. He repeats that again. Yeah, so there's nothing else. Everything is just repeating of same lines that we've already talked about. You have the nerve to walk on my street. Didn't anybody tell you that? My modus operandi left a lot to be desired. I got more holes than a golf course. Oh yeah, you'll have company. Damn. So he's basically saying I've got so many women, referring to them as holes, which is pretty crude. I got so many women that you'll have company, meaning like when I put you behind this big tall wall, you're going to hang out with the rest of these women that I'm with. I think it's pretty brazen how he is so upfront about his philandering ways, about how he's very comfortable telling these women, this is the deal. You're one of many. I think you're amazing. I think you're beautiful. I want to be with you. But he's very braggadocious in the later parts of the song that aren't really official verses. They're more, again, just the outro ad-libbing. Take your time, because in the back room I'm building and trails off. Big tall wall, of course, is what he's going to be saying there in that moment. Heavyweight bitch, you're so mean. Every time I see you, I want to scream. But the more holes than a golf course, you'll have company. I can see maybe when he was a bit less, I don't know, maybe he was pissed off. Maybe he was just not in a good headspace when he recorded this song. I mean, this was 87 when he was recording the Black Album, an album that he deemed to be too evil to release. So I kind of tells me maybe he just wasn't in a great headspace during this period of his life. And the adjustment of lyrics, the adjustment of tone of this song from version 1 to version 2, while they both contain the same chorus, which in and of itself is problematic, the way he describes the situation in version 2 is just being so nonchalant about it. Like, I've got a lot of women, you're just going to have to deal with it. And even though I'm not going to even let you choose, you're going to be another one of my women behind this big tall wall. And it is what it is. Live with it. And so that's really all I have to say about Big Tall Wall. There is no version 2 entry in the Parade and Sign of the Times book, because Big Tall Wall version 2 really wasn't a Parade or Sign of the Times era song. Recorded in July of 87, he had already released Sign of the Times. So if nothing else, again, Graffiti Bridge is what Prince claims it was earmarked for. I think it sounds very akin to songs that were recorded for the Black Album. So doesn't really sound much like Love Sexy, because Prince hadn't quite pivoted yet away from the Black Album to make songs for Love Sexy. This song is too dark for Love Sexy for sure. This version at least. So yeah, Big Tall Wall. I like both versions quite a bit. I can't say which one I like better. Lyrically, I mean, the version 2's lyrics, if I think too much about them, they kind of make me feel gross. Just because I think it's... I guess I don't find that type of man to be very... what's the word I'm looking for? I guess someone to look up to. You know, it's not very inspirational to me, and Prince, I always prefer things that he says that, even if it's just said in, as kind of a joke or as a shock value. I don't think this comes off as shocking. This just comes off as cruel and childish in ways. But I do like the groove a lot, so if I'm not thinking too deep about the ad-libs, and the ad-libs are what they are. Again, if he was in a pretty negative headspace or a dark place in 87, post-revolution, post-Susanna, kind of figuring out what he's going to do with his career moving forward, it makes sense. So I think musically, the Big Tall Wall version 2 is really cool. I like it. Version 1's lyrics, even though it still has the same chorus, I think the self-deprecating aspect of the verses makes it the pill that much easier to swallow when it gets to the chorus. Where version 2 is just, again, it's menacing. It's and a bit sexist or misogynistic, I guess, to an extent. Hate to say it, but it kind of is. So what do you guys think about Big Tall Wall? Am I overthinking it? Do I think it's really more harmless than I'm claiming it to be? Or are you kind of like me and you think, yeah, he was being an ass. He was just being a straight up ass. And maybe it's for the best that this song didn't see the light of day until after he had passed, and there was enough time in between the recording of the song, and he had done enough other things in his life where it wasn't like, man, he's really gone off the deep end when it comes to his relationships. Like, he really thinks that he can treat women like this. I don't know. It's always been kind of a part of his personality and a part of his private life, and that's why, it's not really akin to his music. And again, why am I applying so much meaning to this song? This could just be a song about a jerk. And Prince is writing it from the perspective of a chauvinistic pig who is not him. So I gotta maybe stop thinking of it as Prince writing an autobiographical song about what he was like at that time, but a lot easier to do now, this many years later. All right, I think I've rambled on enough. This has been the Press Rewind Prince Lyrics Podcast. I've been your host, Jason Brenninger. You can find the show at pressrewind.net or on social media. And until next time, thank you very much, and goodbye.